Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up, the WNW 233 for Friday, April 1st, 2016. But there's no fooling about this newscast. News broke this week the FBI is getting ready to interview top Clinton aides. It's also reported that Hillary Clinton herself will likely be interviewed. The person taking the point on this investigation is none other than James Comey, the head of the FBI. Now, Comey has taken the point on this investigation, and that should scare the bejesus out of anyone because he was a former top federal prosecutor in his past, in his distant career back in New York City. Now, Time Magazine reports that Comey and his fellow investigators back in the Whitewater days, this is the first time that he has investigated Clinton. So back in the Whitewater days, Time Magazine reports Comey and his fellow investigators concluded what the Clintons did constituted a highly inappropriate pattern of deliberate misconduct. Now, this is Comey and his Whitewater investigators, a big scandal back in the 90s with the Clintons, back in the 80s, 90s, way back when, that it constituted a highly improper pattern of deliberate misconduct, end quote. That's what Time Magazine is reporting. Comey, as I said, is a former top federal prosecutor in the early 2000s in New York City, and I think this case is far from closed. Listen, I have been predicting long before that this email scandal broke that Clinton was not going to be elected. A lot of Democrats are going to vote for Trump, or at least not vote for her. The other thing is I think she's going to be indicted. I mean, listen, folks, let's get real here. And I'm going to say this again. My opinion, Hillary Clinton had a private server because she wanted to do a play-to-pay bribery scheme where she could use a private server to do deals and favors where, somebody makes a giant multi-million-dollar donation to the Clinton Foundation or hires Bill Clinton for some ridiculous speech for 20 minutes for $1 million or $500,000 or whatever. And then magically, after they give money to the Clinton Foundation, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, makes some exemption or does some favor for them. This is well documented also in the Clinton Cash, this kind of pattern in the Clinton Cash book over and over again. Money donated, money given, favor given. This is Clinton, in my opinion, needed a server so she could conduct business and enrich herself with her job as Secretary of State, and national security be damned. This was an unprotected server. The person who set this server up has gotten an immunity deal from the Justice Department. Everybody who touched or came in contact with the server did not have a security clearance, and it was backed up on a cloud across the country. Those people did not have a security clearance. It was a completely, totally unprotected server. So that's what this is about. And I think that the noose is tightening around Mrs. Clinton's neck. And might I add, it is a federal crime to lie to an investigator. It's reported, or the rumor has it, whatever, that James Comey himself will be interviewing Mrs. Clinton. I'm sure he'll have some other aides in there too. And remember, this isn't just a field agent that worked his way up to the top, which is very noble and fine. He's also a former top federal prosecutor in New York City in the early 2000s. Meanwhile, the mainstream media, most of the mainstream media, not Time Magazine, hats off to Time Magazine. They did a big layout this week on this story. But most of the mainstream media continues to do ridiculously positive stories about Hillary Clinton or cover it all together. And here, let me show you. Here is her advisor, campaign manager, whatever, her advisor. He is, look at what here. And let me read this. Clinton has unconventional foes. Yeah, as a front runner in the Democratic Party, it's pretty unconventional to have a massive FBI investigation into you. And might I add, listen, folks, think about this. This is a massive FBI investigation headed by the head of the FBI, former federal prosecutor. It's reported that at least 140, 150 agents are working on this. And this is an investigation that is on the Democratic frontrunner for president. as a reporter, there is no way that this story doesn't deserve ongoing coverage. They ought to have a team of people at every network, every newspaper on this, doing stories every day on this. But instead, they're doing little puffball pieces like this. And let me get in here. Read this here too. Let me get this focused in. Here's the byline. This is in USA Today, folks. Her strategist says her passion and her values, will serve her well against both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. I kid you not, on the that very same day in USA Today, on the front page, here we think it's important that we do a story about Whoopi's pot business. Here we have on the very same day another negative story about Trump. Trump flips on abortion remark that women face punishment. Chris Matthews' hypothetical question: does anybody think we're going to do away with Roe v. Wade and abortion anytime soon in this country? Totally hypothetical, bear-trapped, stupid question. Meanwhile, the head of the Democratic frontrunner is under a massive FBI investigation. And yet they continue to how they cover it at USA Today, and they say, "Ooh, check our website." Well, I did. They're not covering it. Here's another story that this is in USA Today. This is your say. This is in the opinion section. When they don't like a story, they cover it by putting it Clinton's email server, a hurdle for some voters. Yeah, so is a massive FBI investigation into a pay-to-pay scandal in a private server that jeopardized national security. Yeah, her email server, a hurdle for some voters. Here's another one. Here's another ridiculous positive. Clinton, future of Supreme Court hangs in the balance. So does Hillary Clinton's career with a massive FBI investigation. Meanwhile, when they cover Trump, it's, GOP silent as he sounds off on abortion. Like that's a hypothetical, nothing, not going to happen. They're not going to overturn Roe v. Wade anytime in the next, few years, maybe not the next few decades, maybe never. Here we go. Here's another opinion of Trump. This is on USA Today. Again, in their opinion, U.S. workers are not the trade losers Trump imagines. Now, let me tell you who the losers are. The losers are USA Today that decide to be a political spin organization, and the rest of the mainstream media, the rest of the MSM, decide to back a candidate and back a certain ideology and back and be a spin operation instead of a news operation and being fair and unbiased and objective. And they don't even, USA Today won't even talk about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I mean, for goodness sakes, this is Elizabeth Warren voted no, along with Ted Cruz, the arch-conservative and the arch-liberal, both voted thumbs down on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You should Google Elizabeth Warren's talk on what this means. Part of it is it will impair national sovereignty. It will allow corporations to run roughshod over the whole world, and your Constitution and your civil rights and your constitutional rights be damned. But yet, here is how they go great pains to make Trump look bad over and over again. Here's a local story, AP. AP has got their sights on sexism, gender gap, could trip up Trump. Yes, and so could an FBI investigation could trip up Hillary Rodham Clinton if she's indicted for all kinds of things. It's absolutely positively unbelievable. I will, just to show you that I am objective and fair. I almost fell over when I saw the headline here on USA Today. Pennsylvania GOP will basically rebels against Stop Trump campaign. The Stop Trump, people, the criminal crony class that wants to stay in power and keep sucking the blood out of America. And that's what the mainstream media has devolved into, nothing more than a political spin operation covering what I call the criminal crony class. It's not the establishment. It's the people that want to continue to have a lawless business environment, lawless society where bankers can commit all the crimes they want. Nobody goes to jail. You should go back and listen to the William Black interview where he basically came out, and he's a former regulator during the savings and loan debacle where they did jail 1,000 people. He's a PhD in economics, PhD in white-collar crime, PhD in the law. He's a professor at University of Missouri, Kansas City, and he says, basically what we have is a fraud as a business model, that the banks can't function in the United States or Great Britain unless they're committing massive fraud. They can't profit. It's their number one key source of profit. And this is what I hate about the Conservatives. Well, we're conservative. Really? So you're just going to pretend that this massive fraud, where the Justice Department will not bring a case to a single top banker, let alone jail anybody, the underlings. As I told you, you had the case that just got settled for $2,000 where a former Fed employee took sensitive interest rate documents and gave it to Goldman Sachs. $2,000 fine instead of jail and felony charges. Unbelievable. And the conservatives, well, they want to sit there and pretend this isn't going on. And the same thing with the progressives, the people fighting for the little, Hillary Clinton, I'll fight for you. They want to pretend that this massive fraud fest that's going on between government and the banks and Wall Street isn't happening, where nobody goes to jail, break all the laws you want, make all the money you can, suck the blood out of America. That's what's going on. In the Middle East, just to show you how crazy things are in the Middle East, more stories have broken this past week about how forces backed by the Pentagon, the Kurds, are fighting against forces backed by our own CIA, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Now, if you remember, at the end of last year, famed journalist Seymour Hersh, who I believe has impeccable credentials and honesty and integrity, broke a story about how the Pentagon was secretly passing intelligence to the Assad regime to help the Assad regime fight against ISIS and Al-Qaeda. You can't make this up, folks. Scott Ulinger, who was on here talking about the big division in America. There's a big division, that the CIA is a former CIA agent, and he says, we just told what we're told to do. The policy is made in Washington, and then you talked about the big split. Well, he'll be on again in the next few weeks. Scott Ulinger, the former CIA agent. But it's unbelievable what is happening, and I wonder if that civil war, that little proxy fight over in the Middle East, will end up over here somewhere. The other thing going on over there is this is a big deal, and that is the Pentagon is pulling families out of Turkey. Now, some say it's because there could be major hostilities with ISIS and more bombings and things like that. The Israelis are telling their people to get out of Turkey immediately. So things are not cooling off in the Middle East. If you look in Iraq, here's a big headline. This is in USA Today. Iraqi army Mosul offensive stalls in the face of fierce fighting and desertions. It's fierce fighting and desertion. It's stalling. So much for ISIS being on the run or being junior varsity or whatever. Finally, though, the Kerry State Department, the Obama administration, has finally categorized what ISIS was doing, killing Christians and chopping off people's heads and murdering people. They said it was genocide. But they are not in any way, shape, or form knocked out of the park and not going to stop and not stopping. As a matter of fact, it's spreading. It's getting worse. And then you have reports that I read this week of Russian tactical nuclear missiles, 400-mile range type missiles being spotted in their Air Force base in Syria. These are intercontinental ballistic missiles, as I said, at 400-mile range, but these are missiles reportedly spotted at their base in Syria. And then you take a look at this, Obama administration with the dangers of nuclear talks, that they overlook the dangers. And you have Obama, sitting, this is a USA Today story where he's, pondering the nuclear question. And you know what the big thing not even hardly reported in the mainstream media is that Russia's not there. Do you know the two countries with the most nuclear weapons? Russia has more than 7,000. The USA Today has about 7,000. Russia's not going to be there. Forget it. Obama has this big nuclear talk, and basically Russia says, we're not going. We're not coming. That should scare the daylights out of anybody, that the Russians certainly do not respect Obama at all whatsoever. Moving on to the economy, I just had to bring this up this week. Janet Yellen talked, and for the longest time, every time somebody at the Fed, including Janet Yellen, talked, gold would go down. Well, now the opposite is happening. The last two times Janet Yellen talked, gold went up in price, spiked. Okay, and so here's the headline on Yellen rides to the rescue of the markets. She's not supposed to ride to the rescue of anybody. She's supposed to have sound monetary policy where we don't blow bubbles. And what she's saying to Wall Street is, we've got your back. Now, back in December of last year, Janet Yellen had this big dog and pony show. We're going to raise rates at least 4 times. The economy can take it. And all of a sudden, we had the worst January in the history of the stock market. Boom, straight down, bad. Now, it's worked its way back up, but nobody believes it. Nobody believes in the rally. This is a Fed-induced rally. Now the Fed, raising rates, now they've cut it down to 2 times. Let me tell you how many times it's going to raise rates. None. Unless they want to crash the economy. And what did Yellen? Here's another AP story. Yellen stresses that Fed foresees gradual hikes. Yeah, how about no hikes? Because if they raise rates, they will crash the economy. And I only got one headline this week, and it's simply this one, just to show you how good the economy is not. And it's this right here. Walmart's first ever revenue drop, end of an era. This is since they went public. This is the first time year over year their revenue dropped, and this is not a U.S. thing. They have 11,500 stores in 28 countries, and their revenue is less this year than last year. Doesn't mean they're going to go away or go out of business. But I'm telling you, if you want to use Walmart as a metric for how well the economy is doing, it's not going very well. And I know everybody is celebrating the whoa, the Fed's not going to raise rates, more easy money, whatever. Well, listen, John Hausman, PhD, market expert, also of the Hausman Funds. Here is his headline, and he says, hey, worst case scenario, 73% down from here. That this is the third and biggest bubble in recent history, and the biggest huge bubble in history. And huge bubbles mean huge crashes. I have Bo Polney back on as the early Sunday release. He talks about how long from top to bottom in 2001 and top to bottom in the housing crisis, the .com, top to the bottom of the market, the top and to the bottom, how long and the top to bottom is going to be this time, and it's getting shorter every time. The length from top to the bottom of the market. He'll be talking about the stuff he got right. He'll be talking about answering some tough questions about the stuff he got wrong. Bo Polney of Gold2020forecast.com will be the guest on the early Sunday release. But John Hausman and Bo Polney and my friend Greg Mannarino are all saying the same thing. Listen, higher highs, lower lows. This is going to be a lower low than it was in 2007 and 8, and a lower low up to 2009, and a lower low after the .com bust. It's going to be devastating. You won't want to miss the Bo Polney interview. Finally, I just want to talk about the encryption case for the phones the FBI gave up. They supposedly got it unlocked. They supposedly had an Israeli company break the code. And I wonder if they didn't, just as I said, call up San Bernardino County and say, hey, you need to unlock this phone. You locked 2 hours into a mass murder, a radical Islamic terror investigation. I mean, this is a couple hours into this investigation. Somebody at San Bernardino County locks the phone. Why they don't have obstruction of justice charges and tampering in a federal, murder case charges, I'll never know. And I wonder if they didn't just go to San Bernardino County on the sly and say, hey, you guys locked this. Could you please just unlock it? We'll say we got some company over abroad. But here's the headline, and this is a good headline. This is an AP headline. FBI Apple case prolongs larger legal battle, and that's how much encryption can we have? How good can the encryption be? And that's the biggest question. I think the FBI got spooked. I think all the polls were way against the FBI and making the Apple create a back door and break into their own product. I think that was going to be a loser for them, and I think they're going to lose that case. That's why they backed down. And what happened to the NSA and all this bulk data collection? Don't they have all that information anyway? Don't they have? And if so, I mean, that's what it's for, terrorism, right? And all of a sudden, we don't have any of this information. The FBI admits they've been in deep partnership and contact with the NSA. I find it hard to believe, with the billions and billions of dollars spent on spying on Americans to stop terrorism, that they didn't already have the information as just a trial balloon to see if they could, slow down the encryption or stop the encryption or create more backdoors. And incidentally, the Pentagon was, we don't want, no. We'll hold on, slow down on this encryption, destroying encryption. The Pentagon needs encryption once encryption. But the case with Apple and the encryption, how much encryption can Americans have, is far from settled. I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments. Some of the smartest people ever. I mean, I got people quoting the commenters on the site and sending them virally around to people. Thank you for your donations. That helps us out. And my favorite part, folks, listen, that's the way I see it. And my favorite part, this is my favorite part. Fear not. Prepare yourself physically, mentally, and above all, spiritually. Fear not. God the Father is in charge.